Hello, friend. The mystical American Patriots Society is transmitting to you from beneath 4 million cubic feet of solid granite, in the burning heart of the Yellowstone caldera. This is a variety program for normal sandwich-eating Americans with some concerns about living in a deranged, post-Christian technocracy. So, keep your third eye on the sky and your ear to the ground, as Sumo and Smokestack connect your main brain vein to a higher plane. Are you ready? Stand by.
I always feel so relieved when that crash happens and then the happy music comes on. It's really a big release for me. Why are you coughing? What's wrong?
I'm okay. I'm okay.
You seem kind of rough this morning, Sumo.
I don't know. I'm feeling fine. I'm having a little bit of fever. I don't know. I was having some bat soup yesterday.
Don't eat the bats, dude. Don't eat them.
And I don't know. They're just so delicious.
How many times have we talked about this?
Eating the bats.
You gotta stop.
I only ate 3 bats, and now I'm okay. It's fine.
You need to calm down and take a deep breath.
Why are they eating bats?
I don't know, but you need to stop. You need to stop them. That only leads to bad things.
Oh, that's going to be a really insensitive joke if the whole planet dies.
Yeah, it is. And now it's it's on tape now, so we'll see what happens.
That's one of those things. It's like a Schrodinger's joke. It's like it's either funny or it's not funny, depending on the way the future goes.
Yep.
So if this is listened to in the year 2027, and the population is only 2 billion of the world, then that will be a very not sensitive joke. Except that it'll actually, at that time, it'll only be unsensitive for a few weeks when everybody's dying.
Right.
And after that, all the survivors will be like, "Ha! Didn't get me!" And then it'll be funny again.
Okay, so you're going to go through a little awkward phase, but the joke will eventually mature and ripen.
The stock price of this joke, will be high for a little bit and then down really low for a couple of months there, and then it's going to go back up.
Okay.
I mean, we can joke about the plague now, the Black Plague, because just like you can joke about,
Well, so one of the dangers of talking about current events on a pre-recorded podcast is that, one, it may or may not be funny when the audience listens to it, and 2, the audience may not have any idea what you're talking about.
Right, and the audience may also be dead from eating bats or coronavirus.
Yeah, they could be. So when this thing airs, in I don't know how many weeks,
right.
The coronavirus thing might have blown over. They'll have no idea.
It might have been. But, I think the Chinese will still be eating bats. So
they will. We can at least defend them.
It's very, I'm starting to get suspicious. I'm a conspiracy person.
No, I don't think so.
I know. But it is a little suspicious that all these global virus problems keep coming out of China over and over again.
Well, there's Ebola. I mean, that's not out of China.
Well, that was one, but you had the swine flu and then the SARS the first time, and then that other flu or whatever. It's all from China.
Did you see there was a super biohazard research lab in Wuhan, China?
That's what I mean. Is this just biological weapons getting out because of their very poor protocol controls?
I think Resident Evil has been memed into existence.
Yeah, that's why you should be careful what you meme. Because memes come true.
Yeah.
We should do a show on meme magic one time.
Meme magic?
Yeah.
Manifesting things with memes?
Yeah, that's a real thing. But, like all these, if anyone is going to give the world diseases, it should be India.
Yeah.
But that never seems to happen. Credit to all the Hindus out there.
Mm-hmm. Well, their herbal medicine game is strong down there.
What now?
Their herbal medicine game is strong down there.
True. That's true. But they go bathe in the Ganges River.
Well, I mean, if you take your herbs,
yeah,
it levels out.
But the Chinese are eating rhinoceros horn and like tiger penis and all sorts of things.
Right. Well, and they're getting sick.
Yes. True. That's true. The bats, yeah.
Just because herbal medicine works doesn't mean you can eat bats. I mean, there are limits.
But what I was saying is the rhino and I think they consider the tiger penis to be a form of herbal medicine.
Well, that's maybe a bridge too far for me.
In Chinese in Chinese medicine, the different animal parts supposedly have curative powers, which is nonsense. But yeah. So don't eat bats, everybody.
I'm not gonna eat any.
Those of you that are still alive, I'm just gonna assume. I know this doesn't come out for a while. I'm just gonna assume that most of the world has died.
Okay.
By the time this comes out.
Well, the internet probably won't work in that case.
It'll be one. It'll be one server in New York just
humming away.
Humming away, just auto bidding the Dow to all-time highs. Go up.
Somebody forgot to turn off one of the quant trading computers, and the Dow hits 475,000.
Just warring with each other forever, and just spinning, running on a little solar panel, and the Dow is just in the moon. This is amazing.
What a beautiful vision of the future.
And everyone's just dead.
The Dow's still climbing.
And that's America. That's the beauty of the GDP and the Dow. It can go up no matter how miserable everybody is.
Yeah.
It's a great system of quantifying how.
Maybe we're about to see that just played out.
I know. But yeah, so I'm just going to, for the purposes of this podcast, I'm going to assume everyone, including myself, has died of the coronavirus.
We can be revered as prophets posthumously by this podcast.
The AI.
The testimony of this podcast will live on.
We'll become a hot commodity trading on the AI podcast market.
Well, this is only like our 5th episode, so it's going to be a tight commodity. It'll be like that banana taped to the wall, and people are bidding hundreds of thousands of dollars to obtain it.
Yes, that's what I want for us.
It's good to have goals.
Our bat-eaten corpses to just be nailed to a wall with our audio files.
So are you saying this is the revenge of the bats?
This is all, yeah. It's like Planet of the Apes, but with bats.
They've had enough.
It's Planet of the Bats.
So they gave us coronavirus, and then after we're dead, they're going to eat us.
Yeah. The worst possible animal. I mean, that's where the term batshit crazy comes from. It's because bat poop has like every conceivable virus in it, and people that are around them, they call it guano. Mm-hmm. You develop like brain parasites and stuff that make you go mad.
Really?
Yeah, that's where that term comes from. It's like if you're actually around bat shit, you go insane because they're all the parasites, and then they're going to eat the bats. Don't eat bats. Unless you're in a starving survival scenario, don't eat rodents.
Yeah, especially flying ones.
Yeah, the only rodent I ever had that I enjoyed, I had some groundhog. Mm-hmm. I was having a guy paint my house, and there was a groundhog outside, and he killed it with a 2x4.
Yeah.
And then he cooked it up in some soup and brought it the next day.
Well, that sounds all right.
He gave me some, and it was okay. It was 2x4 killed groundhog, and it was fairly good.
I had to kill a rabbit with my bare hands one time.
Really?
Yeah. I'll tell that story sometime. It was pretty funny.
I like how you framed it as had to, as though the rabbit was deathly threatening.
Well, I mean, no, it was more like a peer pressure situation. Oh. But it ended up, I got to eat the rabbit. So it was like a happy ending. But I had to karate chop it.
Smokestack.
Yeah. So, I think before we get started, I feel like everybody in their life needs a little positive affirmation every once in a while. Uh-huh. So I've collected some affirmations that I'd like to share with our audience really quick, okay? All right, here we go.
You are beautifully and exactly where you're supposed to be right now. You are exactly where you are supposed to be.
Feels good, doesn't it?
Every inch of you is so amazing. Every single inch of you is amazing. Every inch of you is amazing. Every inch of your being is amazing. Every inch of your being, inch of you is amazing. Every inch of you, every inch of you is amazing.
You just got to kind of live your truth,
I agree. That's for all the Wiccans listening they really love that. I like that she used inches, and that's a proof of inches because you can't seductively talk about centimeters.
Kills the mood.
Right? You just can't do it. That's
metric. That's why the birth rate is so low in Europe. Is the metric system?
It's true. It's the metric
killing everybody's libido.
Metric system is awful for 1,000 reasons, but the first of them being you can't have a woman talk seductively about centimeters. It doesn't, because it's not a real unit. It's made up. It's
every millimeter of you is just so beautiful.
yeah. I hate that. I hate the metric system.
I have
so much.
47 grams of love for you.
I'm going to do a whole show about the superiority of the imperial system.
I can't wait.
And traditional systems in general.
Mm.
And maybe the duodecimal system, base 12, but that's a bit more complicated for people.
Base 12?
We know right now we have a base 10 numbering system.
Right.
But if we had base 12, you could do mental calculations way better. Which is why ancient systems were base 12. Like the foot is 12 inches, right? And then you have there are 24 hours in a day, 12, 12, right?
So would we have to create new digits? Yeah,
you have to add 2 new digits, and the rest of them can stay the same. That's where it gets a little complicated for people. It
would be like 8, 9, squiggle, and bumfuzzle.
Yeah, it'd be like 8, 9, squiggle, and bumfuzzle, and then the next, like what we call 13 would then be represented by 10.
Right.
And then you just count up from there, right? 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 1 squiggle, 1 bumfizzle, 20, right? Just like that.
Oh.
And that's how you would go. And but see, the thing about base 12 is it has 4 divisors, right? So you can base 10, you got what? You got 2 and 5.
Right.
And 10 and 1, but that doesn't count. But 12, you've got 3, 4, 2, and 6.
Oh.
So you can do the mental math way faster and with a lot more, you can approximate the space between them a lot better. Anyway, that's a different, and also, like traditional societies use that or exponential systems, but
maybe we should have a conference about converting maps onto the base 12.
We will.
We'll have a weekend conference to discuss it.
All of the decimal system comes from the French Revolution, and we know how evil that was. They tried to do everything. They tried to make the week 10 days. They tried to make a month like 10 weeks. They tried to. I mean, it was getting insane.
That's psychotic. The more I read about the French Revolution, the more I believe that those people were completely insane.
Yeah, but it makes for good reading.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sad reading.
Yes. So after we're all those of us that lived through the plague.
I'm living, dude. I don't know about you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna beat this stuff. I was looking at the CDC's website about, see what they recommend treatment protocols and stuff, and it's basically like, there's nothing really you can do.
No, there's nothing. But you can remember our ancestors who, after that plague, they just built churches out of the bodies.
Yeah.
First you burn them all because you can't, but then you still have the bones to deal with. What do you do with the bones? You make catacombs like the French did. That's cool. Then in 1,000 years, that's a very big tourist attraction. And then you make a church out of the rest of them.
Well, if you look at population and population density today, I mean, the amount of bones, it's going to be incredible.
We can build a cathedral of bones, not just a little chapel.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, good.
Yeah, good. So today we're going to talk about Empire Blues. I got Empire Blues.
I got them.
And I think everybody. This is. All right, hold on. I don't have my ukulele, so I'm just gonna. Bum 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 bum. I got the blue. Bum 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 bum. It's just like that, right? Okay. Empire Blues. What is that? I think I was working on this thesis. America's pretty crazy right at the moment.
No.
And we talked about that's in our intro, like the I forget what it says,
deranged post-Christian technocracy.
Yeah. Let's talk about the deranged bit, and also the post-Christian bit. I've been working on this thesis that this is really all of America's behavior, foreign and domestic, can be explained. People always say, like, what has happened to this country? Like good normal people, they walk around going, what's happened to this country? And I would like to suggest that it is all explainable if you just take the hypothesis that America is an empire bent on global domination. Then everything is explainable. Right?
And we just don't want to admit it?
Well, it's not even that we don't want to admit it. Most Americans have just never been taught that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, I think if you grew up in the Roman Empire, they tell you, oh, this is the Roman Empire, and we are interested in making the whole world the Roman Empire.
Mm-hmm.
But Americans still view their country as like a country,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and then they're like, why is it doing all this? Like, why can't we get out of the Middle East? Why are we have all around the globe? Why do we bring in like a bazillion foreigners every day? And why do we have these weird ethics standards now? And it's because it makes sense once you realize America is a global empire, no different from like Rome. It's just it has different operating principles, but the goal is the same.
Gotcha.
All right, so let's think about some of them. So what does an empire need? It needs a religion, right? So we have a religion that pushes the accommodation of all religions, right? So 'cause that way, anywhere we go, they can just come into the empire.
New age scientific capitalism.
Or just tolerance. Just tolerance. Like have,
okay.
right? We have a culture that's about all cultures. Right? Okay. We like just like Roman Empire, you had the pantheon. Like any god you want, that's fine. Just bring it in. Bring it in, right? same thing.
Was that the idea behind the pantheon? Just to make Roman Empire a better? It's just a way to add Legos to your Lego castle.
Well, the Roman pantheon was just come in, give us taxes, and then throw your god in the middle of the rest of them. That's fine. You can keep worshiping him, just also Caesar.
Okay,
right?
Gotcha.
You keep worshiping him, that's fine. Just also worship Caesar and give us some money. Which is why Christianity was a big problem for the Roman Empire.
Right.
Right? Because it held the one God and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So, and that's why Christianity is still a problem for this empire. Because, you know, if you were to think about it, America we have a new pantheon. I was thinking about this the other day. We've got, what are our gods and goddesses? We've got abortion, right?
Science.
And she's like a scantily dressed woman, one breast hanging out, constantly birthing babies, then eating them. Just like like an Aztec.
Yeah.
And then you've got multiculturalism. This is an genderless, asexual, vaguely brown person, and when he opens his mouth, all languages come out at once that you can't understand him. You know, you've got defense, which is like this eagle that's always, instead of his his eyes toward the palm leaf, is always toward the arrows, and he just wants to bomb brown people. You know, that's all he wants to do. Just it doesn't matter why. Just for some reason, just
go ahead and
bomb
do it.
them. Yeah. You know, you've got GDP, which is one half bull, one half bear, right? You can easily construct. I mean, the pantheon is already there. We just haven't formalized it with artwork and statues yet.
We got the scientist and the doctor.
Yeah, it's all. We got the lab coat god. We've got the god of sodomy.
Yeah.
We've got the god of
academia.
We've got the god of low attention spans. I mean, they're all there.
Don't forget the iPhone.
And this is what we're trying to put. Like, you have to adopt our pantheon and come into the empire. Like, that's why people are like, why are we bringing all the foreigners for the college, right? This metric explains all our behavior. Like, why do we have so many foreigners? Why don't we give those scholarships to citizens, right? It's because you bring in the people from China. And you bring in the people from other countries, but mostly China, because they're a future threat, right?
Yep.
And then you indoctrinate them in the school for 4 years with our pantheon of Western values, and then you send them back.
So this is really interesting. So think about assimilation, right?
Right.
Trad Americans are always complaining about that immigrants aren't being assimilated. They're not adopting our culture and stuff. It's like, yeah, they are. It's just your culture isn't
100%.
what you think it is.
Exactly.
They're adopting capitalism and secularism and worship of science and abortion and neoliberal politics
Right.
They're adopting all of it. They're just not adopting what you think they should adopt.
Exactly. That was my realization. It's like, oh wait, no, they are.
Assimilation is working beautifully. Yeah.
That's why the liberals, that's why the left always points to like the Republican Americans and are like, you are the ones not assimilating, because that's true.
Yeah.
Because the American values are not what we think they are or should be.
Right.
Same reason.
No, this kills me. It's like Christians who still think that America is a Christian nation.
I know. That's gone, guys.
It's
gone.
Let it go. Let it go. I use this analogy. It's like we're not like a bunch of Christians picking Christian leaders when we vote, okay?
No.
And you can't argue with each other about who the most godly candidate is. That world does not exist.
Yeah.
We live in Syria. We have more in common with Syrian Christians than we do with the imaginary Christians that occupy America.
Right.
Okay? Syrian Christians say, well, I could vote for Assad or I could vote for Al-Qaeda. You know, one of them wants to keep the peace and the other one wants to chop all our heads off in the street.
Right.
Who are we going to support? It's kind of like a practical matter. Neither one of them represent your values.
Yes.
That ship has sailed a long time ago.
That ship is gone. That ship went over the edge of the flat Earth at this point. You know.
Okay, so the first stepping stone, you know, in recovery is realizing you have a problem. So
yes.
Western Christianity needs to wake up and realize that we are an unwanted minority in a pagan empire.
Yeah, we're a pagan. We may even be the majority, but we don't have any political power.
Right. We're a functional minority. Right,
because the empire has there's a logic of empire, and the empire will serve its own purposes.
Yeah.
It seeks to protect itself. But like that's the other reason why they who are our like all of NATO is a vassal state.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do? It's exactly an empire. It's like a gangster thing. Like, look, we provide you military protection.
Yep.
In exchange, you give us ridiculously good economic trade deals and such that you really can't back out of.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also, you don't go messing around in places we say don't. And if you do, woe betide you.
Yeah.
Like for a while, we've seen what happens to countries that get out of line. Iraq, Libya, a little bit now Iran, right? If you get out of the empire, you're going to get hammered. It's very clear.
So when Trump says he wants to, pull out of NATO and
it's impossible.
Throws that thing around. But why is he saying that then?
I think he does. I think there's a small degree happening now, which is our one ray of maybe hope about this on a political stage. We have lots of hope on a lower stage, but on a political stage, that there seems to be some between the elites, the rich people in the country, those with actual power. There seems to be some sort of small-scale civil war brewing, of which Trump is only the beginning.
Okay,
like so they want to take it in a different direction.
So would you consider Trump an anti-imperialist then?
So far, I don't think he's been playing the game.
Okay.
Completely. Like that's what I mean. Like I think he's gotten in there and realized you have to play it a little bit.
Uh-huh. He's nothing if not practical.
Right. Because look, this is another point. Like that's why they want to bring in Islam.
Yeah.
Right. It serves as both a destabilizing thing for the local population, but also you bring them in, they're out of their zone where their thoughts can be controlled, and then you just pump them all the liberal stuff.
Right.
You indoctrinate, and then they go back. They're talking with their people in Iraq. They're talking with their people in Afghanistan, and they're just transmitting. It's a vector of transmission of the liberal pantheon right back to them.
Ah, okay.
Right? This is the immigration into, like, say, Europe from the Middle East is way more dangerous for Islamic, stability than it is for Western values,
because
quoted.
All those new Muslim social justice warriors are going to go home and overthrow the patriarchy.
I mean, it's already sort of starting. Like that's what the Arab Spring was sort of that, right?
Right.
And they're trying to push that over the edge.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons ISIS started is as an extreme reaction against it to try and preserve the Islam.
Interesting.
Right?
Okay.
Because within the Islamic societies, there's this huge like we want to be like the Western countries now, right?
Yeah.
And we want like we have gone to their schools for like 40 years now. Abdullah has gone to America and been a doctor, and he gives us and we also want abortion and to be gay.
Uh-huh.
And because he's told us about all the wonderful gay people he works with, and then and so then you bring the values back, and that's they really from a geopolitical standpoint, controlling the Middle East is necessary for an empire.
So the Muslims are being brought here to be put under the spell of the whore of Babylon and then sent back home.
Correct, and a lot of Muslims realize that, and that's why they're so. That's one reason why a certain segment of Islamic people have become more extreme.
Okay.
Because they're trying to. It's a reaction against it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like the Christians feel like, oh, the Muslims are coming here and they're spreading their religion, and the Muslims feel like, oh, the Western liberals are just infecting us everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's because in all of these cases, liberalism is winning.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's beating Christianity. It's beating Islam. It is still ascendant.
Yeah.
Right. And this makes everything make more sense. Okay. Another way you can look at it, the empire and our foreign policy is oil.
Mm-hmm.
And people say now, I've heard this a couple times, like, well, we don't need to go in Iran because we're now oil sufficient. We can make our own.
Yeah.
But the point was never about controlling our own oil. It's about controlling everybody else's access to the oil.
Right.
Right? Because if you control whether or not they can have it,
we can set the price of the commodity. Yeah.
Yeah, like Japan gets all of its oil just because we say so. If we could turn off the tap if they got out of line overnight, and Japanese society would collapse.
Yeah.
That's why China and Russia have been sort of cooperating to make a oil-based yuan, oil-based currency. Mm-hmm. Because they want to get out of that.
Yeah.
It's not going to be successful.
Mm-hmm. You don't think so?
I doubt it. I doubt it. There's so much momentum behind this American empire that it's insane when you start thinking about it. I mean, okay, so Iraq had oil it could give to people that weren't our friends. Mm-hmm. Gone.
Yep.
Libya to some extent.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, I remember Gaddafi was all about, like, he was going to quit using the dollar and start a gold-backed Middle Eastern currency.
He was like, I'm going to have a gold-backed currency. And we're like, no, you're not.
Yeah, squash. Assad, too, I think. I think Assad was into that stuff. Or
yeah.
Is.
Look,
I mean, he's still hanging in there.
You can do whatever you want to your people, but you cannot get off the U.S. dollar, mister.
So that's how Saddam went from, beloved potentate of the empire to enemy number one. Is he wanted to break the economic
overnight, just like that's why it shifts so radically.
Yeah,
like you hear the narrative, it shifts so quickly now. You can see it in your own lifetime. Like, wait, weren't 5 years ago we friends with this guy and he was the best?
Yeah.
And now it's like, what? It's because he got out of line, and then when you get out of line with the empire, you get smashed. Right?
Yeah, it's like John McCain with pictures shaking hands with all these ISIS dudes and Taliban dudes and stuff, and then he's like, "I gotta kill them."
Okay, where else are we? We just helped stage a coup in Venezuela, huge oil producer of that continent. Where are we in Africa? Where's most of our bases in Africa? Nigeria. Yeah. Guess what Nigeria has?
Do they have oil, perchance?
Oh, so much oil in Nigeria.
Yeah.
Right. That way you can control if Africa gets the oil.
Right. You
want to control what everybody gets. I mean, NATO is all of our vassal states. Japan's a vassal state. We have 800 bases in around 80 countries, basically, is an approximation. Mm-hmm. No one else can do that.
Yeah.
No one else just gets to say, hey, we put bases in your country.
Yeah.
Like in Iraq, I want to read you something. I screenshotted this because I was thinking about this, and then this popped up on my feed, and I was like, well, that's just like straight confirmation. Let's see. Oh, here we go.
Every inch of you is amazing.
Yes. Every inch.
Just trying to fill the time.
Every inch of you is amazing.
Okay. So Iraq just voted to say, hey, please leave Americans, right? So Iraq, we have bases in Iraq, and we've been on the auspices that they want us there for like years, and now they're saying we don't want you there anymore. Mm-hmm. And then we go, well, sorry if we alluded that was a choice.
Yeah, it's actually not optional.
It's actually not and this was in the Wall Street Journal. U.S. warns Iraq it could lose access, losing access to its account at the New York Fed, where international oil sale revenue is kept if it moves to expel U.S. troops.
So it's like you can't. We're gonna steal your national bank account if you kick us out.
The thing about the American Empire is just like the Roman Empire. It wants to use diplomacy and like economic carrots and sticks, right? But if you make it, it will absolutely destroy your whole country in 24 hours.
Yeah.
If you don't play along, like if Germany got out of line tomorrow and started trying to get off the American dollar, we would go to war with Germany. We would find some reason.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so that's
now. Hang on a second.
Yeah.
In light of all this discussion, how does in the mystical American patriot society, how does one, be a patriot and still understand all these things? That's right. It feels a little conflicted.
I know, but you know what? It's like you gotta love your place, man. Mm-hmm. I understand. Look, America. This is. I saw a meme, and I was like, "That's me." Okay. It was like me normally. America is corrupt. It's totally evil. It's got all these problems. There's nothing redeemable about it. And then it was like me when some dumb European expresses a dumb European opinion, and then you're just covered in American flags.
Yeah.
And it's like, shut up.
It's like Q. Lee Greenwood.
Yeah.
I'm proud to be an American.
Like, shut up about your metric system.
Yeah.
Like, hamburgers are better.
Yeah. So it's a little easier. It relieves all the cognitive dissonance if you just say, well, it's an empire, but I still like living here. And it's been pretty good to me.
Yeah. I mean, and that's why people were so surprised about the reaction, the level of intensity of reaction against Trump. Uh-huh. And also why they're against Bernie Sanders, by the way.
Right, yeah.
Because both of those guys were elected and ran on policies that are very not good for the empire. Mm-hmm. And lots of people, in fact, the entire global stability rests on America continuing to do the same thing that it's doing.
Right.
If you change course, all of Europe is out of the military protection zone. Mm-hmm. All of Japan can now be targeted by China.
Yeah.
All of it falls down.
Right.
We've got ourselves in a position where what we're doing is bad, but if we stop, may be worse.
Okay.
Which is why they keep saying, well, we can't get out of the Middle East, because if we do, then it'll turn into worse than when we started. And it's like, well, yeah, that's true.
I don't know if that's true. I mean,
it may not be.
That place is terrible.
It's true. It's true.
I kind of feel like maybe Persian culture would do a little bit better in bringing some harmony to the Middle East than American imperial culture. And, and then if that counter-reaction between Islam and American empire is not so strong, there's room for Christianity to sort of go over there in a peaceful way and say, hey, we had nothing to do with that, by the way.
Yeah.
That wasn't us. But I got good news, bro.
Yeah. I got some good look. So I guess the question, I was pondering this and I thought, well, what do you like? Just what you asked. How do you get along in America when you understand that?
Yeah.
And I think you gotta focus on, is there a way? We may not be able to stop empire. Mm-hmm. There may be like an internal logic to the lifespan of an empire. Like you look back at the Roman Empire, and it's obvious in hindsight that what they were doing was a bad idea.
Right.
Like they're overextended in 1,000 areas. They're running out of money. Mm-hmm. But for some reason, no one could stop doing it. Mm-hmm. That may just be what happens. Mm-hmm. So then we got to think, well, how can we make it good, or at least not as evil.
Okay.
Right? And that should be our goal. Let's make it less evil. And that's possible. I mean we have a recent example in the USSR. The USSR, the script of the USSR largely flipped on its head toward the end.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it began, and it was pushing all these weird things. And then toward the middle and the end, it was like hyper traditional values. Like they had propaganda posters of like, get married, have children, exercise, right. Buy local. I mean, all these things were like, it's like, let's go to space, and yeah, there was still some, camps and whatnot, but you're always going to have that.
Mm-hmm.
And, but the script was sort of flipped on its head. Right.
Right.
And so the question is, how can we help flip the American script on its head?
Well, I think, the early church in the Roman Empire was pretty effective at building its own society.
Yes.
And its own culture, its own set of values that they were it was socially enforcing its own culture rather than having a culture projected upon you by the mechanisms of the empire. Like we do, I would argue.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the other thing that helps is realizing that we don't really have any democratic power.
Yeah, no.
Like, democracy is kind of a joke at this point. Like, this is not a democracy.
No, I don't know what it is.
Not even remotely. But we don't have any real political power. That's why that we're a two-party system and a third party will never get any traction, and why only totally compromised people ever get anywhere close to an elected office.
Exactly.
It's because it's not real. It's a game. It's a game.
The idea
that I don't have to go to bed with a whole bunch of guilt over who's in public office right now in most places. Thinking that it's the result of, in some fraction, by my civic participation, because it's not. Yeah.
But what they told you in school growing up is anybody can be president. Not true.
Not true.
You will never be president.
That's right.
Now, that said, unless you have $1 billion, then you might can pull it off, right?
You can buy it, maybe.
Maybe.
But usually you gotta like drink blood with some people or something.
Yes.
I don't know what they do to get into the club, but.
But I was thinking, but what you can do, what our listeners can and should perhaps do, is you can probably get into local office.
Yeah.
And there in a local office, and maybe even something as big as like being a governor of a state.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's less, they don't really care about you as much there, right? Like you just are a satrapy of the empire there,
right.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
But that's a powerful position for insulating your own community against some of the insanity.
Yeah.
And one of the problems is right-wing people usually just want to be left alone.
Yeah.
And so they don't want to go into office.
That's exactly how I feel, man.
Right. But I'm encouraging Matt's people, all of you in the Mystical American Patriot Society, if you're in a position where you can, especially if you're like, say, a retiree, you got some time now, go into local office. Even if it's something small, just like your county, right? You can do wonders for just insulating your community from these giant imperial problems.
I kind of feel like the county level is the magic. The
county level is great because look, here's what you do. If they want to do anything weird, like they want to resettle 1,000 refugees in your city, or they want you to have drag queen story hour or whatever, you just say, "Oh, we can't. We ran out of money. I don't know. We can't do the thing."
Yeah.
You can just when you're a bureaucrat, you just stonewall everything. They're like, I don't know. I lost the paper. I don't know. I don't know where the paper is. I lost my password to the computer. I can't do the thing. Yeah. That's all you. And then they just go away because they're not going to fuss with you.
Right.
If you're in maybe if you're in like a big city, if you're in New York City, you might have more problems.
Yeah.
But in most of America, just doing that sort of little thing can really help protect your personal community from this wave of, and that will.
Well, when they try to bribe you, you have to politely decline.
Yeah, when they try to bribe you, you have to politely decline. Yeah. You can't take the money. Don't take the money.
Yeah.
And I trust that most maps people will not take the money.
You can just tell them that you cannot accept for secret reasons.
Right.
Yeah.
This is my favorite. I must not accept. I cannot accept for secret reasons.
Yep.
But yeah, that's the Empire Blues. I was thinking that's really the reason. America, because after the USSR fell,
Mm-hmm.
all right, here's a quick overview of what happened. World War I, all the royalty died.
Yeah.
Or was stripped of power.
Okay.
In the vacuum came three ideologies that vied for power: liberalism, fascism, and communism.
Mm-hmm.
Communism and liberalism teamed up to kick out fascism.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had a 40-plus year battle to see who would be ascendant.
Mm-hmm.
Liberalism won, and that's why liberalism is like, okay, we did that. Now we conquer the globe.
Right.
Now everybody be in us.
So
and they made huge strides.
So the freedom v communism thing was never really the truth of the matter.
No, because you got to think these ideologies are like species of their own. They're just exist
freedom
to
wasn't on the
produce.
ballot. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's what's going on, and that helps you think about why things are happening in America the way they're happening.
Mm-hmm.
It all makes sense through that lens.
Well, it just having a useful model. I think
Yeah.
people get a lot of psychic pain because their model of America doesn't accurately predict or explain the actions of America.
Right, like our America, the vision of most Americas is hot dogs, baseball, hamburger, bang bang. Right,
Yeah, right.
like hamburger, bang bang.
Which sounds awesome.
It does.
Yeah.
But that's not the actual America as presents to the rest of the world.
Right.
And I know none of us voted. I don't think any American ever was like, yeah, let's be an empire. That sounds great. That voted for it.
Yeah.
It just happened. We were the one developed country that survived World War II, and it just happened.
Yep.
So that's where we are, and that's what we got to deal with. And that's why Smokestacks has some herbal remedies for you in your Empire Blues.
Oh, baby. So, all right, we're gonna take a little detour back to herbal medicine. We talked about this a few weeks ago. My research has been continuing and fascinating. I learned all about hops. Okay, hops as in beer, right?
Yeah.
So the short version of this is hops is pretty much like menopause medication for menopausal women to replace their estrogen. That's what it was traditionally used for. Hops has powerful estrogenic properties.
Don't doubt it in the least.
Very powerful, in fact. So if you're worried about your soy intake, that does not hold a candle to the effect that hops has upon you.
I have noticed the facial expressions of craft beer people are very effeminate.
Okay. So,
yeah, I mean, like, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Hops is not good for you.
It's not. And there is a ton just sitting out there in books is a ton of information about this that does not get talked about or transmitted. And it's amazing that there's a ton of evidence for this out there. Medical, historical, all sorts of stuff. In fact, back in the day when women would pick hops, it would screw up their menstrual cycle and they'd have their period early. That was like the first sign that, hey, maybe, this was before we understood hormones and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But there's a history to this, and I'm ashamed to say the Protestants do not come out looking good on the history of hops and how it got into beer.
We all have our problem.
Yeah, we do, and I think there's a way for Protestantism to fix this. But let me jump into the history of the thing.
Okay, go for it.
Protestant Reformation time. Okay, 1500s. So at that time, and in the thousands of years prior, beer was not made with hops. It was made with all these other herbs, and a lot of it was for medicinal reasons. You would go to the ale house to get your ales fixed, right? If you were ailing.
Is that real? Is that really real?
Yeah, man. It's like medicinal or like food and medicine and brewing. It was all connected. All that stuff.
You go to the ale house
to get
your ales fixed. That makes so much sense.
Hippocrates, I think, said, let your medicine be your food and your food be your medicine. It was all, there wasn't this scientific dichotomy placed at the time. So, and different styles of beer had different effects on you and all kind of stuff. So then the Reformation comes around. And some of these beers were highly inebriating, and some of them were psychedelic. And I mean, there's all kind of stuff. Some of them, you know, cured your cold, whatever.
Right.
So the Reformation came around, and Puritanism is a part of it, and also at this time, the Catholic bishops had a monopoly on all the herbs used to make beer, or most of them. So the major ones, bog myrtle and some others, you had to get from your bishop, and you know, you were charged a high price. It was a major income source for the Catholics.
Okay.
So the Protestants said, "Hey, I don't know what the motivation was. Either one of them is bad. It was either we're going to screw up the Catholic income stream, just stick it to them, by the purity laws, which I'll talk about in a second. Or they were like, well, we should really drug everybody with hops to sedate them, and lower their sex drive to get more chaste behavior. It was one of those two motivations. Maybe they were mixed.
I could believe the Germans doing either.
But and in England too. So what happened was
England too, yeah.
The Protestants went to the government authorities in Germany and in Britain and said, hey, you know, we want you to enact these beer purity laws. So maybe some of you beer snobs out there, of which I am one, have heard of the German purity laws. Well, this came about because the Protestants said, we need to make all beer with barley and hops. And that's it. Okay? You can't use all this crazy herbal stuff. You know, it makes men go wild and have you know, riotous behavior, and, you know, and we need to encourage temperance and chastity, and so we're gonna put hops in the beer, and it will tranquilize everybody. And so now when you drink beer, it makes you sleepy, you know, instead of into a raging sex berserker or whatever. I don't know what these other beers did to you, but so that was basically the sales pitch for the purity laws. And so they were successful, and then all these laws were enacted, and from that time forward, all the beer was made with barley and hops. And so now,
it has been ever since.
When you tip a beer back, you're getting a big old dose of estrogenic herbal medicine in the form of those hops. And so, you know, of course, an IPA or a double mega IPA or some of the crazy stuff that's popular right now, it's a lot. It's a lot of hops.
Yeah,
and
we're being poisoned on every level.
Yeah.
Every level we're being poisoned.
Yeah, so, I mean, this has physiological effects, you know, soft fatty tissue in the stomach and chest area on a man. Right. And, you know, all, you know, makes you sleepy. It is a tranquilizer, like I said. There's so much information out there. And I was looking on YouTube, and some of the, like, celebrity trainer YouTube guys have covered this, but it really hasn't. I don't think this information has really penetrated the beer scene. I'm sure some of them know about it and have just decided to embrace it. Because whatever, I don't know why. But
it ought to be obvious because most guys really into beer have like C cups. Well,
dude, so
it's like chill out with the beer.
Yeah, for real. So okay, but
drink whiskey or something.
Right. So and it all made sense to me because I'm like, wow, you know, I never thought about it before, but beer, makes me feel sleepy.
Right.
But if I have some whiskey, you still get a little buzz on, but you don't get it doesn't put you to sleep like beer does. Right. But beer straight puts me to sleep.
Right.
And that's like, oh man, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So I drank my last hoppy beer last night.
Oh, good.
I am never drinking a hoppy beer again.
I'm proud of you. This is probably why Russian guys are so much more masculine on average, because they just drink vodka.
That might have something to do with it.
They don't have any beer, but they also have the impulse control of like a 3-year-old.
Right.
I love the Russians though.
Maybe there probably is some tempering effect to all the hops. I mean,
I'm sure there is.
But maybe we need to find a different way besides mass drugging, than to achieve temperance.
Look, this could be a MAPS project. Everyone out there, become a little chemist and brewmaster and make some good alternative-based beers that don't have hops in them.
Well, back in the day, the tradition was most households would make their own beer, and they had their own family recipes or regional recipes that they enjoyed, and there's all sorts of different herbs for different purposes. And that can the Protestants, we can atone for this, by embracing alternative brewing practices and small
Yes.
batch brewing practices, making and sharing our own beer recipes with each other, and just saying, we're sorry about hops. We're not going to use this anymore. Here's some alternatives that are good. So like traditional root beer with sarsaparilla.
Right.
Sarsaparilla has its own medicinal effects, mainly a lot more friendly to men than that of hops. And so you go make some traditional alcoholic root beer. And
Root beer does not mean non-alcoholic, by the way.
No,
root beer means made with sarsaparilla root.
Yeah, you
You can totally make alcoholic root beer.
Oh, totally. No, there's a great book called that Stephen Herod Buhner. I've talked about him before. He's got one called Sacred and Herbal Healing Beers, which I bought it and I flipped through it initially and I thought this is the biggest bunch of woo I've ever seen. But then I opened it up again. I was like, actually, there's a lot of really cool recipes in here that I want to try. Now there is a chapter on like highly inebriating and psychedelic beers, which I kind of feel like psychedelics are basically sorcery. So I don't
listen. All the Protestants out there in Maps, Smokestack is telling you to replace your hops with psilocybin mushrooms.
No,
that's what he's saying.
I'm not. I'm saying the opposite of that. I'm saying the opposite. But something like sage or saffron or juniper, so you can get that bitterness that the hops need. You got to balance the sweetness of the malt with something.
Right.
Juniper leaves and berries. That was one that was used. And there's a ton of. It's a great book. It's just fascinating to read, and he goes into a lot of the science. Here's an interesting. Well, I won't read that on air, but there's aphrodisiac properties in some of them.
Right.
I mean, there's all kind of stuff. It's fascinating. It's a fascinating read, and it'll really kind of open your eyes as to what's possible in terms of home brewing and not using hops. But there was a world of it out there, and it was crushed by the Protestants. I'm so sorry. But we're going to fix it. We're going to make it right.
We're going to fix it. We're going to fix everything. This is a pro-justice podcast.
Yep.
We're going to fix the beer issue.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna fix the bat soup issue.
Yeah.
It's all going to be fine. Don't make beer out of bats, by the way.
No rodents, flying or otherwise, should be in your beer.
Yeah. No flying rodents.
That's bad news. Okay.
How weird is it that they fly, by the way? That's like a flying mouse. No one ever stops and says, that's really strange.
The idea of eating a bat is just the nastiest thing I can imagine. I mean, it's horrible.
There are some caves not far from me, very few people know about. I've been to a couple of times, and they don't tell people about it because of this reason. There's a species of bat there that lives in like only that cave and the one across the river.
Wow.
And it's like, hasn't been found anywhere else. And it's this little tiny bat. It's maybe like an inch tall.
Mm-hmm.
You can go in this cave and you see like hundreds of them just hanging upside down in this cave. And it's sort of neat. That may be where I got into woo. Mm-hmm. Because I had all the guano.
Right.
I'm not sure. But I respect bats in their own environment. They can hang out in the cave all day long.
Right.
Just don't eat them.
Yeah. If I'm caving and there's a bat sleeping there, we're cool.
Yeah, that's because I'm in your home.
Because I really enjoy caving. I'm not going to hold it against the bat.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, so that was good. I like that segment. Because look, guys, brewing stuff is not that hard. I did it one time, and I'm not even.
Yeah,
it wasn't that complicated.
You don't need $5,000 worth of gear to do it either. You can do it with a big stock pot, a couple of big stock pots and a strainer.
I think when I did it, and I only did it once because I'm not a big drinker, but I just wanted to try it, and I think to get the equipment, I spent $300, and I could have gone cheaper.
Yeah, you can go to Goodwill and get a few big pots, and you're good to go.
Yeah. I mean, I think I was talked into a bit more by the beer people around me.
Right.
They're like, to really do it right, you need this and that. And I think that was that helped, but it wasn't necessary.
They've been making beer a lot longer than they've had thermometers.
Yeah,
I'm just
exactly.
saying. It takes a little feel. I think, you gotta get a feel for the temperatures and the way everything's supposed to look. So that's where an apprenticeship comes in. Back then, people learned through apprenticeship sort of programs, and they would coach you in the feel of the thing, and there was intuition. But now we've quantified everything, and intuition has gone out of the world.
I know intuition, and we're gonna once Maps, we have our scientific publication journal up and running. You can all submit your recipes.
All right.
For medical medicine, because the next thing we're going to talk about is cue spooky music because we're about to get into the Twilight Zone.
I ain't afraid of no ghost.
Don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid of no ghosts. But this again, now. You know how you said you had that book and you thought this is the biggest woo.
Yeah.
That's the great thing. That's the thing you got to realize. The final red pill is that all woo is based and true. All woo.
That might be an overstatement, Sumo.
A little bit, but you know what? The more I go down the road, I'm like, this does work. But I'm going to talk about. I call this segment "Breaking the Cathedral." I call it "Breaking the Cathedral" because the cathedral is this Moldbugian term for the dominant paradigm. Right?
Right.
Okay. So, and what that is that everything in culture serves the cathedral. And that's basically our secular religion, which is reductionist materialism.
Okay.
Right? Okay. So everything in society is geared toward this idea, and they push this from a young age that basically all you are is physical particles running around. All your emotions, all your thoughts, all of your loves and fears and hopes and dreams, they're just electrical signals in your brain. They're just hormones coursing through your body, which are ultimately controlled by chemical processes, which are ultimately controlled by physical processes. And if we just knew enough, if we had a big enough computer, we could calculate everything that you are, think, do, and feel from the motions of subatomic particles within your body.
Okay, so that was kind of the attitude that put all the hype to the Human Genome Project, etc.
Right, right.
Okay.
It's there is no space for the spiritual or even the mental in the cathedral's landscape. Like I was listening the other day, what's his name? Sam Harris, the big atheist guy.
Yeah.
He actually said that consciousness is an illusion.
Wow.
And that, I think Daniel Dennett said, I watched a talk with Daniel Dennett say that too. He said consciousness is an illusion. It just isn't there.
How do you lose something that isn't conscious?
Right. That was my immediate thought. I was like, you can rebut that in 1 minute because something has to be there. Something has to be there to be deceived.
Right.
Right. You can't have an illusion if you're not conscious. Right. It's like but the scientific paradigm that we have been handed.
But that's where it ends. That's where it terminates. That's reasoning.
Where it terminates.
Yeah.
That's because it has no room for anything beyond particles, basically. Mm-hmm. There's just the world is particles and then there are fields and that's it. And so that leads you to these absurdities. One of the things that our dominant paradigm does right now is it discounts everything that's actually important and just says that's not real. Mm-hmm. Right? Love, memory, faith, soul, all the stuff that matters. It says,
it's not real.
All hokum.
Yeah. It's a bunch of woo. Your soul is woo. Yeah.
It's woo. And that's why I say all woo is actually real. But think about it. So here's the cathedral supports itself. All these entities, they exist to reproduce themselves. It's a very evolutionary idea. But what do you have in science? They have these huge barriers to entry. You've got grants that you have to get, and you have to abide by certain rules. You've got scholarships, same thing. You've got, they tell you need expensive and highly specialized equipment that ordinary people can't have.
Yep.
You got regulation of access to different scientific materials, chemicals. You've got laws which prevent people that don't have the proper credentials from doing experiments, licensing. You've got all these barriers to entry that form a priestly caste of scientists, of lab coats, which then they exist to dictate and to tell the public what is the approved truth from the cathedral, which feeds them their money and resources.
Right.
That's why that's why even if you come up with evidence that maybe global warming isn't real, or at least isn't as bad as they make it sound, it doesn't matter. They're still going to shove the same thing because
evidence doesn't matter really in this.
they don't exist to give truth so much as to propagate the messaging that helps the cathedral.
Right. They
exist to push this reductionist, materialist viewpoint to the world. Mm-hmm. And a lot of scientists that are involved in that, they're not like bad people. They have been trained to think that is the position of science arrived at through centuries of debate and hard-won success over superstition.
Yeah.
And that must be defended. Right? They see themselves as defenders of logic against the superstitious and the irrational. Mm-hmm. Okay. So not necessarily bad people.
Right.
But here's the thing. We all know that things don't fit into that, right? We all know that this is not sufficient.
Yeah.
Materialism doesn't account for everything that matters. We all have had experiences in our own life where you're like, that seemed a little supernatural to me, you know? Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to continue talking today about some of Rupert Sheldrake's work, because I didn't get to finish it last time, where we talk about more morphic resonance and the ideas. He published another book called, I don't remember the exact title, but it was 7 Simple Experiments, a do-it-yourself guide to revolutionary science. And in this book, Sheldrake lays out 7 experiments about things that we don't really know or understand yet, the answers to which could be revolutionizing to the dominant paradigm, and which are mostly extremely inexpensive and can be done by laymen. Mm-hmm. All the best science in the past used to be done by just amateurs who were dedicated.
Yep.
And a lot of it still is. I mean, you know, like there's not a whole lot coming out of science lately. I don't know if you guys have noticed.
Oh, yeah, they don't it's propaganda. Meanwhile, there's a dude, is he in West Virginia, that has the cold fusion reactor in his barn?
Yeah, he's working, you know, you can do your own science. That's what we're trying to get you to, and we will publish it here at MAPS if no one else will. We will have a publishing house here, right?
I love it. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to go through these experiments and we're going to talk about them a bit. Sheldrake lays out some, and he's done a few of these himself. I've done a few of them. I've done one of them, I should say. So these are 7 areas of interest which they seem to point to an explanation beyond materialism. And if you can gather sufficient evidence about them, they can become a vector of breaking down the materialist dogma of the cathedral.
Okay.
Number 1, psychic animals. Smokestack, have you ever had an experience with a psychic animal?
I don't think so.
It's okay if you haven't.
I don't think so.
This was an experiment. Sheldrake wrote a book about this. This is probably his most well documented, and it's also one which the results have been videotaped and you can watch on the internet. And they've been videotaped by independent third parties. Mm-hmm. He said did the experiment. And this was he wrote a book about this called "Dogs That Know When Their Owners Are Coming Home," which is a long title that tells you exactly what it's about.
He needs to work on his book titles. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Dogs that know when their owners are coming home. And he had a lot of anecdotal evidence going around that some dogs would get up, go to the door, and wait, a few minutes before their owners actually pulled into the driveway. Mm-hmm. And people noticed that, and they thought, well, the dog just sort of knows what time he gets home every day. But a lot of people said, well, actually, he does it like on weekends when we're not regular and like other, it's a bit strange. And so we decided to test this, and he identified a couple of people. He's clear that not every dog does this. Maybe not every dog is capable. Maybe every dog is capable, but they just don't care enough to do it. Right. Who knows? But some dogs exhibit this behavior repeatedly. And so what he did is he found a couple of I think he found 12 different dogs in the UK where the owners had claimed this, and he'd done some research on them and to see that they had a track record of this happening.
Right.
And he just did some experiments, and he'd have the person leave their house, right? So you set up video cameras in the house with the dog, have the person leave the house, right? And then you would have some sort of randomization device, like you'd either roll dice or draw them out of a hat to say like how long that person has to be gone, right? And that person doesn't know.
Okay.
So Sheldrake pulls out, let's say he pulls out 45 minutes, or in some cases 2 hours, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pull it out, and then at that person's gone. They've gone to get some coffee. They're running some errands, whatever they need to do, and then he calls them on the phone after the 2 hours. He's pulled out of a hat and says, "Okay, go back home now."
Okay.
All right, and the guy says, "Okay," gets in his car, drives back, and some of these dogs, no matter how often you did this, within about 5 minutes of the guy pulling in, they get up from laying down, walk over to the door, and sit by the window and look outside.
Interesting.
It was amazing. Right? And there's all of this other anecdotal evidence about like people that have haunting experiences. They often claim that like their cats can see the entity as well.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? Like dogs, like a very common poltergeist haunting thing is like the dogs will begin growling and you don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
Or like they'll be looking at a corner, like staring at the corner of the room very intently and there's nothing there and they're just like, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Very common. And so, and there's also the thing about dogs and cats that get lost, you know, like they got lost from you on your trip to Yosemite and then you couldn't find them and you gave up and you went back home to Maine and then like next summer they turn up at your door.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? That everyone's heard that story and it's like, well, how in the world could they do that?
Right.
Right? And Sheldrake's point is this evidence, and he has videographic evidence. It's pretty great. And he was viewed by third parties. He had skeptics come in and double check him behind. I mean, he did his work.
Mm-hmm.
And you can watch them do this. And so, okay, if that's true, then there's something else going on here besides strict materialism, you know. Like
Right.
there's some sort of force involved.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That isn't just particles.
Yeah.
And it appears to be a mental psychic force. And this is also why I know people would probably, in the paranormal community, people that are Christians are very often like, everything's demons.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's reductionist in another way.
You're right. Yeah.
Not everything is demons. Some stuff is demons.
Yeah.
But like the people that say like, well, if you experience like psychic dreams or whatever, or you have psi powers or whatever, then you must be possessed by a demon. Like, no, unless you want to hold that household dogs are also possessed by demons who just live in them for no other reason than to anticipate when the owner's coming home. Right?
Could be some weird. There could be some weird kink in demon world.
Maybe that could be like a fetish.
Yeah.
But I don't. Let's not talk about demon fetishes.
Okay. Yeah. probably not a good.
But I think once you have this idea that the reason people think that, this is the problem, is that Western Christianity accepted, to try and be cool, or I guess, or to try to not look silly, they accepted hook, line, and sinker all of the materialist science.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just like, yeah, well, I get, you know, like in any talk of like weird woo stuff, it's like, oh, we're not gonna be silly. I'm like, guys, our book talks about like ghosts
Yeah.
and like demons and like guys that turn sticks into snakes.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Just, it's fine to have a little bit of woo, you know?
Right.
And the thing is, you can validate this woo empirically. Like this is, if you do it, right?
Mm-hmm,
If you're willing to do the work, be honest, don't make up your data, but that sort of stuff does happen. Like, you know, and so then, okay, so let's just say we document that. That's step one. Then we got to explain it, step two. But that's another thing. But all we're looking to do right now is put cracks in the cathedral's armor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they're psychic animals. Number two, same vein. The first three of his experiments are all animal based because it's like exploring animal powers and abilities that seem to be beyond the material.
Gotcha.
The second one is homing pigeons, and homing pigeons are very remarkable. He goes into great depth about the homing pigeon. And he got into this by reading about World War II and World War I. You know, in both World Wars, homing pigeons received medals for valiant behavior in battle.
Were the medals like glued together birdseed? I just wonder, like, what do you make a pigeon's medal out of?
It was just like a normal small-sized medal, like a little purple heart. Like some of them, you got purple hearts because they were shot in the wing.
Okay.
You know, and you give them. But the idea was, you know, radio communications were often skim, especially in World War I, but also World War II, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in World War I, they didn't even have radio yet.
Right.
And so one of the ways you would communicate from the front lines is one of your guys if you're like the commander would have a homing pigeon, and you write a little message on it, and then you let it go, and it would fly through the maelstrom of like shells and get back to the base, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then and that was a very effective means of communicating over distances for the time period.
Yeah. Okay.
And in World War II, with the introduction of planes, they started going crazy because the planes often couldn't communicate. You know, not all of them were equipped with radar.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them behind enemy lines. You know, at best, communication was spotty. And so, yes, they were using radio as like a primary thing, but they had these doves as backup.
Okay.
And the British especially had I believe it was called the British Army Pigeon Corps. And it's just like, you know, how we have dogs today for the military.
Yeah.
Dogs. It was like that, but with pigeons. And they would do things like they'd take 3 or 4 of them on one plane because it was pretty dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And the plane is going, oh, we need to make a course correction. That attack vector isn't going to work. We're going to go over here, right? Try to pick us up in this area if we crash, right?
Okay.
Because we're not going to be in area 1. We're going to be in area 2.
Okay.
They tie that message to like the feet of 5 pigeons, and they just throw them out of the plane. Right? In the middle of the night, over the ocean in the winter. And the pigeons still got home.
Wow.
Right? After being in a plane. So they didn't migrate there. They didn't like go there and then work their way back. They were put in a plane, flown somewhere, thrown out, and the pigeons got back.
Yeah.
How do they do it, right? And bird migratory habits in general are very interesting. All animal migratory habits, because it's still extremely unexplained how this is possible.
Yeah.
And of course, the standard thing that you hear in the news is like, oh, it's just magnets.
Yeah.
They have like magnetic particles in their brain that align with the Earth's gravitational field, and then that's like a little internal compass, and they get home. But if I give you a compass, if I give any of you out there a compass, blindfold you, put you in a plane, and just throw you out at some random point on Earth, you don't know whether home is south, north, east, or west.
True.
You have no idea, right?
Even if you were looking at the compass the whole time you were traveling out there, you'd still have a hard time.
Especially if you did it over the middle of the ocean.
Yeah.
Right? Because like which way, there's no landmarks. So a lot of studies were done to try and figure out, well, how do pigeons do this miraculous feat? They have tried everything. The literature on this is fascinating, and you feel sorry for the pigeons. Because they said, okay, maybe it is magnets. Maybe magnets. Okay, well, they tied magnets to their feet and made solenoids on the back of their heads, and they threw them out. They still got home.
Wow.
Okay, okay. They said, well, maybe it's smell. Well, they put wax in the pigeon's nostrils. Still got home. They even to double check that they tried 3 different methods. There was wax in the nostrils. There was putting like formaldehyde on the beaks so it would cover up any smell.
Uh-huh.
And they even went so far as to sever their olfactory nerves so they could not smell.
Wow.
They still get home, right? So it can't be smell.
Mm-hmm.
They thought, well, maybe it's sight. Maybe they just have this excellent memory of sight, patterns.
Mm-hmm.
They made little tiny frosted contact lenses for these pigeons. Put them on. And the birds still got home.
Unreal.
Now, then this one researcher who was getting frustrated, he's like, how can I stop these pigeons from getting back to their house? He anesthetized the pigeons. I can never say that right. He knocked them out with drugs.
Uh-huh.
Put them in a rotating barrel. Put them in the back of a truck. Drove down a tortuous country road for several hours. Stopped. Let them out of the barrel. Woke them up. And they went home.
Oh, man.
Like, what are the pigeons doing, right? So this is an example of pigeons having some sort of woo metaphysical connection to their home,
Mm-hmm.
right? They just have, like, it's some sort of, like, connection to a place that exists, and it, like, draws them back. And Sheldrake suggested this, and he's done experiments with, and you guys, pigeons, like homing pigeons, not expensive. It's a poor man's sport. Okay. In the UK, they still do it. They still do it as a hobby a lot. Mm-hmm. And it's not because a pigeon costs like $5 and feeding it costs like $5 a month. Okay. You can have a pigeon.
Do you have to train them in any way, or do they just do this?
I'm not exactly sure how it works. I think you have to habituate them to a specific place.
Okay.
So that they consider that their home.
Okay.
And then after that, they just find their way back to it.
Wow.
But they do all sorts of pigeon races based on this. Like, you have and then you put the pigeon somewhere else and you race them back, right?
Okay. Okay.
It's a fun sport. But this is an inexpensive experiment you guys can do. So Sheldrake thought, well, okay, if they do have their home, if they have some connection, what if instead of moving the pigeon, we move the home? Would that work? So Sheldrake built a pigeon roost on top of a truck.
Okay.
And made them habituated to that. And he said, and he was doing some experiments with this. He said the first time I did it, they were really confused. And he said, but then I got to thinking, well, I would also be confused if I came back home and my house was moved 100 yards down the road.
Okay.
I'd be like, oh, I don't know if I want to go in there. But after they got used to it being a little bit mobile, he would move it more and more. Mm-hmm. And they were still able to find this thing. Now, he hasn't done that to. Last I checked, it's been a while. I should ask him. Last I checked, he hadn't done that to the extent that he'd wanted. Mm-hmm. And he thought maybe you also needed to carry more of the home with you.
Okay.
Maybe like just their bed isn't enough. He had some success, but not, huge success, I think. And so he thought maybe if you put it on a boat, like maybe if their whole thing is on a boat, mm-hmm. because maybe the pigeon considers its home like its surrounding area where it goes out and gets food, and not simply just its bed, right?
Right.
So I don't know. That's a huge area of interest. Even if you can explain it in completely materialistic terms, which I think is looking more and more unlikely given all the things they've tried. Mm-hmm. That's an unexplained area of research that you can do at home.
That's cool.
Right? You can have, and there's a lot of biologies like that.
Yeah.
Because biologists have been trained to believe that we're just machines, we're like biological robots. Mm-hmm. But if you think about how weird quantum mechanics is in physics, life has got to be way more strange because life is so much more interesting. All right. Another one.
It's like the DNA thing,
Yeah.
You can't explain how people turn into people with just DNA. It's too much information there and not enough bandwidth.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can't explain, like, another area of research is animal instinct. Like, no one teaches a spider how to spin a web. Yeah. Not even its mother. Like, the mother will often try to, like, eat it or something. Yeah. Or so it goes out, it knows how to spin this intricate web. Mm-hmm. The European cuckoo, the cuckoo, we say, mm-hmm. but that's where the term cuck comes from, by the way.
Oh, right, because they jump in the nest. Yeah.
They jump in the nest. So the European cuckoo is raised or is nested by birds, not even its parents. Yeah. Right? Mm-hmm. Then it hatches. Mm-hmm. And then somehow, by some magic, it migrates back to its ancestral homeland for breeding.
Ooh.
Right? Because they all go back to the same place.
But it's breeding. Never been there before.
It's never been there, and it's never had any contact with any other cuckoo to learn it.
So if the cuckoo was conceived in a spot, but the egg was laid in a nest far away, the resulting bird knows how to get back to that spot. Yes, in some weird. That's why are they all the same? I mean, how specific are we talking? Are they all going to the same spot, or are there different spots where populations of?
There are different spots for populations. I mean, they're over such a wide range. Okay. They have different spots, but they basically go back to where their parents conceived them.
Wow.
How does this transmit it? Right? Where's this information come from?
Well, you got to be able to store. If you're a materialist, then right. you have to say that location data and tracking information can be stored in DNA, which I don't think you can make that claim.
No, I don't think you can.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got the dogs that know when their owners are coming home, psychic animals. We've got the homing pigeons. Then we've got hive minds. Okay.
Okay.
Termites, especially. Termites are probably the most interesting in this regard, but also bees, mm-hmm. ants, other swarming creatures. They behave with a level of communication and sophistication that seems to go beyond simple instinct.
I thought they were just squirting hormones on stuff.
Right, and you can explain some of it, especially with ants, with the hormone thing.
Okay.
But the the termite colonies, like an ant colony has basically workers, drones, and then like the warriors and then the queen.
Okay.
But a termite colony has several different divisions of labor.
Mm-hmm.
And they will respond to things, like you can do things to a termite mound that are really out there. And they are able to respond to it in creative solutions ways, right? That seem to suggest some higher level of communication. And they seem to be able to do it even when smell receptors and stuff are disrupted.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's another, like, if you can figure out like how these animals are actually doing these things, again, that's very cheap. That may, and again, these are just proposed experiments that might, right? We don't know the answer. We don't know what the answer is to.
So is the first step in this like figuring out how to stop the behavior?
Yeah, that would be a good start. Like if you could figure out actually what would reliably stop homing pigeons from getting home, other than like cutting off their wings, obviously.
Right. They can't fly there.
They can't fly, so take that. Then okay, now that's an area. If you can figure out like, okay, some dogs seem to know when their owners are coming home. Yeah. How can I trick them? Like one of the things in science is you see something, you want to figure out how it works, and you say, well, how can I stop it from working? And that'll give me a clue to how it works. Right.
Right.
Okay, number 4. This is number 4. Now we're moving into the realm of humans. Mm-hmm. I've done this experiment myself with interesting results.
Okay.
I found some people very good at this, strangely. And this is the sense of being stared at.
Yeah, okay.
Have you ever, people have always said that they can feel someone staring at you.
Oh, dude, I can do this like a champion.
Yeah.
There's a kid at church that plays this game with me, and he wants me to close my eyes, and he's like 7 years old, 6 years old.
Yeah.
He's like, all right, close your eyes, and he tries to sneak up on me, and I have to, from some unknown direction, and I have to be able to reach out and whack him before he gets to me.
Exactly.
That's the game, and I'm really good at it. I mean, I get him most of the time.
Yeah, and I think that we've all had the experience at some point of you're walking around or you're sitting and you feel uneasy and you turn around and someone's staring at you. Mm-hmm. I think that's a very common human experience. And I've even heard from some hunters that if they're staring very intently at an animal for too long, trying to decide to pull the trigger or not, the animal will inexplicably just turn and look right at them.
Ooh.
Right. And I've heard. Now I can't verify this next one. This is Chinese drywall. Okay. I don't know. Right. I've heard some people, a couple of people that were apparently snipers in the military, not necessarily the American military. Uh-huh. I won't divulge where they're from, but they said that they were trained when they're scoping a guy to not look him in the eyes because they would pick up on that.
Ooh.
Like not look at their face. They said that the person would get an uneasy feeling from a distance if someone was looking at their face with the intent to kill them. Right?
Ooh, weird.
So I've done this experiment, and this is a very simple experiment. What you do is, and you can come up with creative ways to try and like see how the extent to this goes. Mm-hmm. You have someone turn around, face the other way. Then you have someone that will either stare at them or not, right? And you make that choice random. Like you make it maybe a card flip, a dice roll. Will you stare at them? Will you not? And then you have some sort of indicator like sound, like a clap. Or it's better to have something that's not like you do, because then a skeptic could be like, well, there's some subtle cue in your clapping or whatever that tells them what you're doing.
Right.
So you maybe like a buzzer or something, okay, that tells them, now the trials begin. In about 10 seconds after the buzzer, tell me whether or not you're being stared at or that you're not being stared at, right? Mm-hmm. And just record it. Record what was the actuality. Were they being stared at? Were they not? And then what did they guess?
Interesting.
And what you will find if you do this over a great many trials, and I recommend doing it, don't do it, psi effects, psychic phenomena are like other things, you get tired. Mm-hmm. If I ask you to lift a weight, if I ask you to do it 200 times, it's like, I can't do it anymore, right? Mm-hmm. So I would recommend just doing this 10, 20 times a day over a couple of days, right? Give yourself time to rest. But I've done this experiment myself, and I found that almost everybody, if you do enough trials, has a greater than 50% accuracy rate. Mm. which is itself strange, right? You should be 50-50.
Yep.
Most people hover around 54, 55.
Mm-hmm.
Some people hover at really quite high, like 70, 80%.
Whoa.
Some people are quite good at it. I think psychic phenomena are like anything else in the human population. Like if you say, I asked them to throw a baseball, there's going to be a small percentage that are great at throwing a baseball.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the people are going to be average and some people are going to be horrible.
Yep.
I think it's like that with mental phenomena as well.
Okay.
So you can find people that are outstanding and also people seem to be able to get better at it with time, with practice.
Mm-hmm.
So you can just test this, and this has been tested. This has actually been tested quite a bit, and the results are over and over again that you get a greater than what should be expected by chance success rate, to the point where it's statistically impossible.
Gotcha.
Right. So there's actually numbers proof that there's some effect going on here. Now, one of the things that complicates it is that it may be produced by emotion or something, like you're staring at someone because you hate them or because you're lusting after them or something, and the person picks up on that.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're doing it in a clinical environment, the effect of it may be tapped down a bit because you're just doing it to see.
Oh, gotcha.
Right. But this is the idea. One of the things, Aristotle had this idea, and I think this is an interesting idea. This is such a weird idea that most people are going to have trouble getting it at first. But what if Smokestack, images in your head are exactly where they seem to be? That make sense?
No.
Okay. When you look at your computer screen or a book, right? The image of it seems to be out in space.
Okay.
But we are told that no, it all exists inside your head. Right? All that your vision, the image exists. The light comes into your retina. It's inverted by the retina. Then it goes into your brain. And so all of this is just happening inside your brain.
Right.
However, my perception and my experience is that no, the image I'm perceiving is actually out in space.
Mm-hmm.
What if it actually is? Right? A lot of this is, what if things are exactly how they seem to be?
Okay. Okay.
Right? Because when the Greeks thought about the vision, they believed it was a two-way process, wherein, yes, light came into the eyes, but also something came out of the eyes and projected forward. A mental projection, right?
Okay.
And like, because what if things are exactly where they seem to be, right? That's a strange.
You're
strange
making
phenomenon.
me think of Schrodinger's cat here.
It's a little bit, right?
Okay.
And that's one of the great things. This is why we have a window now. This is why materialism is breaking down, because science has transcended itself.
Okay.
Physics went so far into materialism that it got back into magic.
Yeah.
Because now you go down and then it's like, woo, the particle can tunnel through the universe.
Mm-hmm.
And it just poofs into existence.
Yep.
And there, there's some probability that anything could happen, but biology and most lay people in America are still stuck in a version of science from the 1800s.
Mm-hmm.
Where like everything is reducible. Like the goal of biology right now is this is why microbiology gets all the funding.
Mm-hmm.
Is because they want to reduce everything to chemicals, to molecules. Then they can hand that off to chemists who can explain it in terms of physics. And they can hand that off to physics. And then they say, well, done and dusted, everything has been reduced to particles.
Gotcha.
Right?
But the biologists are failing.
Well, it's not even that. It's not. Yeah, it's that they're failing. But they haven't even got the memo that if they were to do that, then the physicists would say, oh, yeah, but that's a little bit magic. Right? Like, people, like, things have gotten strange.
Yeah, yeah.
In physics, things have gotten really weird. People haven't really caught up with that.
Right.
But all the spiritual is creeping back in through the materialist window. You can't kick it out.
Well, the Enlightenment, divided the world into particles and woo, and the woo shall not be touched. Yeah. And so then everybody went to the particles, and they went deeper and deeper and deeper, Indeed, until one day they ended up back at the woo from the other side.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that will always happen. And let me tell you something.
And meanwhile, the church is back there in the Enlightenment era, standing between the particles and the woo, saying, "No, guys, don't go in the back door. Come in the front door of the woo."
Right. And that's advice for all of life. Don't go in the back door.
Enter the woo from the front, the main entrance. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And let me tell you, if you go into the woo too far, I've seen this happen with people that are really into woo.
Yeah.
You wrap back around into the material. If you go too far and wonder, you can never escape it, right?
Yeah.
And so that's okay. So that's the sense of being stared at, and the extended mind, psi phenomena, that sort of thing. Let me find where I wrote down the other two here. So it's very. These are, and again, that's a very cheap experience. The other one is phantom limbs, which you talked about last time. If you know anyone has a phantom limb problem, I was looking up some other stuff about phantom limbs. Did you know phantom limbs can be, if they have the pain, you can help with someone's phantom limb pain by massaging the phantom limb.
Whoa.
Right. So if you're having pain, one of the things they'll do is they'll just massage where it seems to be. Right. And then that has some effect of making the person's pain go away.
Oh man.
Isn't that weird? And
yeah.
I even heard one fella say that he had acupuncture on his phantom limb. And what they did was they took a bunch of cloths and formed it into the shape of where his leg would have been, and then just stuck the needles in that. And he was like, and it helped the pain go away for like weeks.
Unreal.
Right? So so I don't know what to make
okay.
of that.
What if the acupuncture needle is an antenna connecting the acupuncturist's morphogenetic field to a specific spot in the patient's morphogenetic field?
Maybe. I love that line of woo. That was some great woo. Like antennas and field. That was
Yeah. It's like you're directing a little current right into that spot.
Yeah. I mean, maybe so. So who knows what that's about? But if you're one of the unfortunately many veterans who lost a limb serving the empire, first of all, salute you. Second of all, do some science with it, right?
Yeah.
Lemons to lemonade here. Okay, let's figure out what this phantom limb stuff is all about. And I went on instead of a tangent about phantom limbs this week. I read about phantom breasts, women that have mastectomies. I read about phantom penises.
Yikes.
They what's weird? They had phantom erections.
Oh, that's weird.
That was the strangest thing I read all week. The guy was like, he was talking about he had some horrible accident and he lost some of his genitals. He said, but I still get all the sensations of an erection somehow, and like this weird. It's weird. I don't.
That sounds really weird.
It sounded very strange. And then I got to thinking, what if a ghost is just a full body amputation? Like, what if you just amputate the whole body and then they're like, well, now you're a ghost.
Well, they do call them phantoms,
That's why they call them phantoms. Like, maybe if your limb is torn off, you just have a bit of your ghost hanging out. I don't know. I don't know how it works, but I do know that people see ghosts pretty regularly.
Yeah.
So, all right. So the phantom limbs, and we talked about those experiments last week. Okay, 6 and 7 are a bit harder maybe for individuals to do.
Okay.
However, they're still there, and I want to add a few of my own just real quick before I go into those.
Okay.
No, I'll do 6 and 7 first, and then my own. 6 is the possible variability of physical and universal constants. Okay, so in physics, we have this idea of a constant.
Speed of light, etc.
Speed of light, mass of a proton, Avogadro's constant, Planck's constant, mass of electron, the electromagnetic charge. All these things are assumed to be constant and eternally constant.
Okay.
Which is a strange idea. Like where they get this idea? If you thought like this is why actually science is sort of based on an old view of God, which is that in the time when this was all being formulated, people really wanted God to be the God of complete order, and he would have mathematically, like a clockmaker, have made everything just beautifully work together and peaceful. And so there were things that just, like a perfect clock, it's like it ticks once every second perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
And they really wanted the universe to be like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they would do these, and it's assumed in science that just there is no, like, the physical laws operate the same way every time.
Okay.
Okay. But you can look back at all of the measurements. Like, do you know what the speed of light is?
No.
Fan. All right. It's 299,792 .458 kilometers per second.
Okay.
Very fast.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But that is by definition, not by measurement.
Oh.
People don't realize that. They think that that's that in 1972, I think they got together in Geneva. I forget where it was. And they got together and they said, well, what's the speed of light?
Mm-hmm.
And they just said, this is what it is.
Okay. So, like, basically to make all the models usable, you have to have a constant there.
Right. You have
but
to
it
have
doesn't mean it's constant in reality.
But here's the thing. If you look at all of the measurements, that's simply an average of all the measurements.
Oh, okay.
That doesn't, like, no one ever actually measured that number. And in fact, when it's still measured, the measurement result varies by up to 30 kilometers per second.
So wait, the average was never actually recorded in a single test.
Correct. And
so we're just assuming that the average is true and basing our entire system of physics on that, even though it's never been actually validated.
Correct. Because we're based on this assumption that it must never change because the laws of the universe, we call them laws, right? Mm-hmm. As if they're given by some divine lawgiver,
mm-hmm.
And then and we assume that must not change. So therefore, any variation must be due to our human experimental error.
Right.
And then we're probably close to the answer on the average.
But really, we're projecting our own model upon God, because what we're saying is we came up with this model of the universe. It requires that light has a constant speed. Therefore, God must have made light to do this.
Right.
But we're getting that from our own theory.
Correct. And then we said, so now people don't even measure the speed of light anymore. But if you look at the graph, if you graph out the measured speed of light from 1910 to 1972 when it's defined, mm-hmm. It's sort of a scatter plot.
Yeah.
It's like, and it sort of converges, or, it sort of is converging toward the 70s, which is when they decided, okay, well, this is a good time to do it. But that's true of everything. All of these constants, when you measure them, you never get the true answer. And sometimes you get wild variations.
Hmm.
In fact, the gravitational constant has been probably the most controversial. That's been so hard to pin down that they've even suggested, some cosmologists have tentatively suggested that it changes over time.
Okay.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And another thing you got to think about, when we make these grand predictions about the universe, like the Big Bang and the heat death of the universe and stuff,
mm-hmm.
This is all based on measurements in one tiny portion of the universe over the span of basically 100 years.
Mm.
Why do we think, where is it written that all the constants were the same 1 million years ago or 50 light years away? Like, if you measure it there.
It's a pretty big assumption.
It's a giant assumption that we're basing all of our scientific and cosmology based off of,
mm-hmm.
is that if we measure it here, it's like saying if I measure the slope of the ground where I'm standing, then that's what it is across the whole globe.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. And
there could be some undiscovered medium that light is flowing through, and it travels at different speeds based on the density of that medium.
Right, or just, that was the whole thing with the aether, and that the Michelson-Morley experiment sort of makes ether hard to defend,
mm-hmm.
like a medium for light. But that doesn't mean that light is itself, like, if you just consider the medium of light space-time, it doesn't mean that light is itself, traveling at a constant all the time.
Well, don't sit there and tell me that light is a particle and a wave. If a wave has to have a medium.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing about the light is that that's why I mean it's magic. We've gotten into the realm of magic because
Right. It kind of hacks me off that in science class you learn that light is a wave that has no medium.
I know. A lot of people don't like that. That was why the ether was supposed by many people as like this cosmic medium through which everything travels.
Right.
But it's been hard to detect that.
Yeah.
So we have to come up with new explanations. I mean, there still could be some such thing, but we just haven't detected it, right? But anyway, so what I'm trying to get people to see is that actually a lot of these scientific claims have feet of clay. Because if we were to have measurements, say, at Alpha Centauri, who's to say what we'd get? Yeah. What would we measure the mass of an electron to be over there? What would we measure Avogadro's constant to be if we were on the edge of the universe, right?
Yeah.
And one of the ways that you can personally do this is, again, I talked about this last time, the melting points of materials. When you can look it up in the literature, and the recorded melting points of various things have changed dramatically, sometimes up to 30 degrees Celsius over the span of decades. Wow. Okay? That's a huge shift. And so one of the things that might be an area of research is we just see, actually, if we do this over and over again, keeping conditions the same, is it always the same? If we plotted it, is it like you could take some sort of new compound, I don't know what it could be, something you could access, and just see, like, does it actually behave the same way over and over and over again? Or is that just an assumption?
Or if you want to get all quantum, you can say it doesn't have to be a new compound. It just has to be something that hasn't been measured a lot. Right.
Right, exactly. And so so number 7 was he talks about the input effect, or like the effect of the researcher's beliefs on the experiment. And this is, I think, pretty huge. Physics has also run into this problem with the observer effect, which is that, apparently observing something makes just the simple act, not even touching it, just the simple act of looking at it causes it to be different. Right. And so Sheldrake points out that isn't it phenomenal that so many of our experiments produce the exact result we were looking for? Sheldrake is like, you had this hypothesis, and like, isn't it weird that we have such little published negative data? Like, well, I tried this and it just didn't work.
Well, I'm just really good at hypothesizing.
Right. Yeah. And his point was like, well, people are just throwing out data they don't like. And obviously, to make all this work. And then B, the human mind can find what it's looking for. As Christ said, he who seeks finds.
Okay.
And so if you want to see the universe as X,
I don't think he was talking about science.
I think he was talking about everything.
Okay.
I think he was talking about everything. I'll go into that one time. But I do think there's a way, like, I'll give you an example. This was, I'm going to read just a bit of this. This was from 1910 to 1913. There was a dispute about the charge of an electron, which is now considered a constant, by the way, between the American physicist Robert Millikan and his Austrian rival Felix Ehrenfeld. Okay? They both had data that were pretty reliable, and they disagreed on what it was, right? Okay. So they're like, well, my data says it's this, and his data says it's that. So, Ehrenfeld, the Austrian guy, claimed the data showed the existence of subelectrons with a fractions of a unit electron charge. Okay. So he's saying it's actually there's different charges. Okay. And then Millikan said, no, there's one charge. And to rebuke his rival, in 1913, he published a paper full of new, precise results supporting his own view, emphasizing in italics, quote, in italics. So he's like, this is like him. It's like, take this, Ehrenfeld. This is not a selected group of tests, but represents all of the tests experimented during 60 consecutive days. Okay, so and for that, he got the Nobel Prize in 1913. Okay, but now he's dead, and we have access to his lab books. Okay. And they reveal a very different picture. The raw data in his notebooks were covered with annotations about the different experiments with comments such as, quote, very low, something wrong, or, quote, beauty, publish this one. And it's, and also, I mean, the same was true for Gregory Mendel, the famous father of the idea of genetics and inheritance, the monk.
Uh-huh.
His pea breeding experiments where he was breeding peas.
Yeah.
The results he provides us are from a statistical standpoint, too good to be true. Like, that's not what actually like we know about it now. And like you were overstating your results a little bit, Mendel. And it's not that these guys are lying per se.
Yeah.
It's that they really believe their thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they just assume that if the data doesn't match, it's because they did something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
And it's like, well, he's like, of course there must only be one charge on an electron. I must have screwed up this measurement.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not the thing's fault. It's just, and then it's like, this one worked. I did that one right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I mean by he who seeks will find. There's a huge amount of interpretation in science that people have not really grokked yet or come to terms with.
Right.
And that's one of our things is we have to constantly like just throw these rocks at lab coats.
Okay.
It's like, what about this, you dummy? Yep. Because the lab coats are high on their own supply.
Yeah.
A couple other experiments that I've attempted, some with success, some with not, is these are just mine. These aren't Sheldrakes. There's the thing about everyone's heard about plants. You grow some plants. If you talk nice to them, they grow better. If you say mean things to them, they don't.
Mm-hmm.
That actually sort of works.
Really?
And I don't know. I don't know what that means. Right now, a skeptic can rightly point out, like maybe, and maybe you need more controls. Like maybe you're subconsciously not feeding the ones you don't like, properly. And so you need to have very precise, like, records of like, I did this. But there's also you can get some woo about that one. Mm-hmm. There's been scientists that have claimed that like, actually, if you just yell at water angrily and then freeze it and look at the crystals, it looks more jagged than if you talk to it nicely.
Ooh, weird.
Right? And that's something you could do no problem.
Yeah.
Get you 2 cups of water, say loving things to one, and call the other one a bunch of names, and then freeze them and look at them under a microscope and just see if that difference is actually there.
Sounds like a magic spell.
It does, but that's the thing about logos, the word, right? Like, all ancient people believed there was, to some degree, you spoke reality into existence.
Right.
And also the Bible says that the universe was spoken into existence. And that's why we're created in the image of God, because we have the ability to speak. Yeah. Right? And so maybe that's actually sort of true. Maybe you can, maybe that happens. So try something like that. I did an experiment with rice. Mm-hmm. And this one guy had claimed a similar thing, that if you had 2 different things of rice and you were nice to one and sort of mean to another one, or you gave one good energy and one bad in a very woo term, that the one you gave bad energy would rot faster. Mm. I did not have that experience, and I realized afterwards, because the way I did it, I actually sort of like ended up canning the rice. Like I preserved it.
Gotcha.
Like just none of them rotted at all. Mm-hmm. I think it's because I killed any bacteria and then sealed it airtight on accident.
Right.
But so I need to repeat that one. But and again, there you go. I didn't get the result I wanted, so you repeat it. But maybe that was because I actually just sterilized it beforehand unintentionally because I cooked it. Then I put it in the jars, and I thought, well, then afterwards, like, didn't it just come out of boiling water? Yeah. Maybe I should have let it set out for a minute before I put it in the jars, right? So there you go. We can do science ourselves, right? Mm-hmm. You don't need a lot of experiments, and you can even do complicated science if you're more. This was some entry level stuff. You can even do without very much equipment. Like, chaos theory mathematics was done by guys with an oscilloscope and an analog computer that they'd wired up with just wires themselves. Wow. And a dripping faucet. And with the because they wanted to know, like, if you're just curious and you record things, you're doing science. And sometimes you'll have breakthroughs. Because they were like, well, isn't it a bit weird that when you have a dripping faucet, it doesn't drip with regularity? Like, it comes out with this different, like, blop, and then a little bit later blop, and then sometimes blop blop. And they're like, well, what's the fluid mechanics going on there? So what they did was they measured it with like a little laser, and they measured so they have a very accurate when the drops fell. Mm-hmm. And then they just sort of plotted the interval between the drops, and they found actually there's like a pattern, like when you plot it, it made like this butterfly shape. And they're like, okay, so there's actually a pattern behind the chaos that can be, and that was the beginning of chaos mathematics, which was seeing this, like, looking for patterns behind apparent randomness. And that actually has been hugely helpful for people with, like, heart arrhythmias and stuff, because we found, like, when the heart goes into afibrillation and stuff, there's actually, it looks like a random beating, but behind the randomness is another pattern, and maybe from that we can reintroduce the correct pattern, you know.
Ooh,
and so
okay.
you don't need a lot of equipment to do revolutionary science. Like the chaos mathematics, which was a new field that began in like the 60s and 70s, was just guys in a garage, you know, and with a dripping faucet. And all you got to do is be curious about something that seems sort of mundane, and then write it down and try to figure it out. And like I say, Maps will publish it all, you know, even if it's a lot of woo.
Are we going to do peer review?
We're going to have peer review.
All right.
We're going to have peer review. And the peer review will be like, you know, it'll be very scathing. Like, this, you suck.
Yeah.
And
well,
then
we got to have higher standards than the cathedral.
Right. Yeah. No, we're not going to, we're not going to be mean about it. But, you know, you got to, you know, just, I trust that the guys out there, all of our mechanic friends, all of our Wiccans, they can all competently record what they do, account for variables, and write it down. Okay. And that's all it is.
I look forward to trying to replicate the garage experiments of our audience.
Yes, and then if you guys have a good result and you give it to us, then we're like, okay, we'll have a show about it. We're like, this was a great experiment. This guy actually showed that mice can detect magic spells.
Awesome.
Or whatever, and then we'll say, all right, here's his plan. Go ye forth and see if you can replicate.
Okay, cool. So,
mice.
All right, audience, if you do some garage science and detect some repeatable woo, you need to send us your report, and we will try to replicate it, and we'll do a show about it.
Exactly, and it doesn't even have to be woo. It can be if you have a new, like, guy. You can do this, guys. Like, you can. A lot of you guys out there are very smart, and you can do things like invent like a new fuel additive that actually makes your car run better. Some people even do this, and like you can prove it. You can prove that your car runs better, but there's all these barriers to you getting your information out there.
Oh man, putting information or products into the automotive market. Yeah, it's impossible.
Yes,
it's really rough.
You know, if you have. I'm just personally into woo, so that's why my examples were woo. But you can do all sorts of things, you know, new materials, new mathematics. Even, I mean, two of the greatest mathematical revolutions in the past century, fractal mathematics and chaos mathematics, were both started by amateurs. Benoit Mandelbrot was not originally a mathematician. He just looked at a tree and said, "Isn't it weird that the little tree branch looks like the big tree branch?" Yeah. And then he figured that out, and then he became a mathematician because he started his own whole field, right? And then these chaos guys, they had an analog computer, and they were just really autistically concerned about the way water droplets fall, and they noticed that behind the apparent randomness is a pattern that you can see and detect. Very cool. We can all do this. We don't have to rely. You don't need $1 million. You don't need a grant. You don't need someone telling you that consciousness isn't real and emotions don't matter. And that you know, right. You can do this, and we will do this, right? And so that is the message from today's maps. And don't eat any bats.
Don't eat them.
That's an experiment the Chinese did. Eating bats is bad.
So maybe
We now-
it's a giant cultural experiment that has yielded bad results.
Right. If any of you out there want to do your own, test on trying to make hyper horrible viruses, we'll publish that too.
No.
I mean, we won't.
Don't make
But
bioweapons.
You could.
MAPS is not a terrorist organization. I just want to throw that in there. We're not.
That was a jest.
Do not make bioweapons.
That was a jest. But you know what I was thinking? You actually probably could without too much trouble. All you would need is like.
I read up on this one time purely for amusement purposes.
Right.
And it is super easy to make like horrible plague germs.
I know. All you have to do is be.
Don't do it.
Think about all the people that. Okay, I'm just gonna say.
Okay.
Think about all the people that done it on accident. I mean, AIDS.
Was AIDS an accident?
I mean, I don't think anyone purposely did it. They were just like, let's have sex with this monkey, and then
And then AIDS. Oh.
Look, yeah. If you guys really want to create a plague, go out there, have sex with the monkeys, and eat bats.
Don't do it.
And then you too can make your own super viruses. You don't need $1 million.
That was not an actual recommendation from MAPS. MAPS does not condone bestiality or biowarfare.
Exactly. I'm just saying you can do things for a lot cheaper if you're willing to do stuff than people make it seem.
Well, that's true. That is very true.
Right. So MAPS is not a terrorist organization. Not now nor ever.
No.
We are not even really a political organization.
We're peaceful.
We're peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
We are against the cathedral and the lab coats, though.
Yeah.
And we're against eating bats. I think we all agree.
Mm-hmm. Eating bats is a horrible practice.
Eating bats is a horrible practice. And again, this is. I know you're all dead, so you can't hear me now.
That's a shame. Sorry.
They've all died of this plague. I'm going to feel horrible if that actually comes to pass.
Yeah.
Like if it sweeps across America, I'm like, I shouldn't have made such light about it.
Yeah.
But,
Can't take it back now.
I can't take it back. What has been written, what I have written, I have written.
Mm-hmm.
I am Pilot. But yeah, so there you go. I mean, there you go. So that's what your show today, MAPS, is Patriots.
Cool.
What should we call our audience? Should we call them Patriots? Should we call them?
I don't know. We'll have to think of
They need
some
a
kind of
collective
cute
name
for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll work on that. If you have any suggestions for what to name the MAPS audience,
what to name yourself?
Let us know.
Yeah.
Not at the time of this taping. We do not have any means of communication with our audience, but hopefully by the time it airs, there will be some apparent means to communicate with us.
Yeah. If nothing else, you can just try telepathy. I'm very open.
Yeah, just beam it. It's pretty quiet or at my house around 9:00. It's probably a good time to do it, Eastern.
Yeah, every night between about 3:30 and 4, I hit my peak REM cycle. So if you want to broadcast anything there through shared dreaming medium,
okay,
I'm open. All right. So there we go.
Love it.
No one eat bats. Merry Christmas. Christmas is still going on, by the way. If you're not a heathen.
Merry Christmas, Sumo.
Merry Christmas.
Every inch of you is amazing. You beautifully and exactly where you're supposed to be. Right now, you are exactly where you are supposed to be. Every inch of you is amazing. How dare you!